Might very well. Okay, I'd like to get started, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting. I see lots of familiar faces, also a few new ones in the mix, so I welcome you to our January MNISPI meeting. I'm Sue Merkins, and I'm actually the past president of this chapter. However, our current president is laying in the sun right now in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, where it's probably like 85 and sun, right? You know, wouldn't you wish you were there drinking a adult beverage of some type? It would be nice. So he asked me to fill in, and of course I accepted that invitation. So anyway, I hope you got enough food. It looks like we got some extra sandwiches and stuff back there, so feel free to have extras if you'd like. Otherwise, you know, I do have some bags that you can take the items with you if you want at the end of the night for lunch tomorrow. We'll go around. I've got a few announcements to make, and then we will go around and introduce ourselves. And we are broadcasting this session tonight, so if you know, if you miss something and want to go back, you know, you can always watch the recorded session. So we have, I believe we have instructions on our website, right, of how to retrieve those? Yeah. Okay. So in about 15, well, in about 40 minutes or so, we'll dive into the presentation itself. So very good. Be sure to silence your cell phones, and I think the restrooms are located right to the left, right? Right to the left, right? I'm pointing to the left. Yeah, right down the hall there. So if you need to step out, that's where they are. We'll go around, like I said, and give introductions, and then I'll do the announcements. I'll start, and because of tonight's presentation on design thinking in training and kind of sort of rethinking some things, I took the liberty of adding a question of, have you ever taken a new road in your career, and you know, were you glad you did, or gee whiz, it was a dead end, never should have gone there kind of thing. So we'll try to keep that brief so as to allow enough time for our speaker tonight. So I'll get started. Like I said, Sue Merkins, and I'm currently a learning consultant under contract at Medtronic, where I worked for most of my career in some form or the other. So it's kind of nice to be back. It's kind of like going back in time, way back to the, you know, mid-90s when I was working there. I'm literally just like 2 rows away from where I used to work. So it's like, this is like weird, you know. But I'm still seeing people randomly, you know, in the cafeteria and stuff. Oh my gosh, you know. Some of which think I've been there this whole time and I've just been moved to another building. I'm like, well, no, not quite. But anyway. Have I ever taken a new road? I think when I started my own small business years back, didn't really plan on that initially when I was thinking of my career and envisioning my career. But certainly I'm glad that I pursued that, you know, because it's paid off in experience and opportunities that I didn't anticipate getting. So, Lisa, you want to be next?
Sure. My name is Lisa Lee. I'm currently in transition right now, looking for my next opportunity, and I'm looking for a position where I can create and lead a team to create the strategic direction of training. And have I ever taken a new road in my career? Yes. I have a bachelor's degree in aviation management. So I was in the aviation industry for a few years, and I'm very glad I changed industries because it's not doing so well.
Okay, you want to go?
Oh, I can go. My name is Tracy Johnson. I just finished up my master's at St. Paul State in instructional design and training. So, looking into stuff, I just have a couple months of contracting. So it's kind of seeing where I want to go, what kind of ideas I want to pursue versus full time versus contract. Like change, yeah. After being laid off again, I decided to go get my master's, and I found I always loved training. I realized I found a degree in it, so that's why I changed, and I love every minute I've taken it. So I found the right field for me. Like, so, but so yeah, so I'm definitely glad I pursued my master's and got done with that and doing what I'm doing now. I love it. So,
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Welcome. Great. Okay, my name is Arnold. I work for Cummins Power Generation, structural designer, and before that, I used to do language teaching. I'm still doing some of it because we are translating training materials into 9 languages now. But not this anymore. I'm more like behind the training and I'm glad I did it. I made the switch 2 years ago and love it. Yeah, that's what I think I could say.
Thank you. David Amber, my company is waiting for results. Currently under contract at Power, my last contract was 3 years. Either with the structural support tools and to do instructional design and e-learning. And that was a big change from 5 years ago, dropped in 2008, was teaching it from college, teaching graphic design, also got into teaching all these courses. And I was professor there. And we off 72 of us. That first year was
People are looking ask it. I thought maybe
different because
well,
I'm much more focused on
for many, that's
once
why
I had a schedule, every once in a while I have a schedule that my classes fall in 2 days and they're pushing me like 5 or 6 classes in 2 days. Great. Things besides instruction. I'm going to be giving a talk about presentation about scenario-based e-learning.
if I do, I need to do it from the broadcasting source. Do you think they still need this? No, I don't need that. No, yeah, I mean, this is like, after people get done, then we can talk about I have to go out and say, we can do freeze, so they will see this.
Oh,
Okay, let me try that. One second. Okay.
Before that, I was things. So yes, I have changed. I feel like actually like my path changes pretty much every week. So yeah, there's always something new that
Freeze.
I'm
Okay.
to explore and fertile and trying to get around. So
Perfect.
I love that.
We have no viewers now. We are screencasting and we are presenting.
What else? Let's see. And what I did, absolutely.
I want to know how can I show later, after the intros and stuff, so we can see.
So I'm looking for bringing it into that world. And part of that, I was going to fellow projects. And we got through about 6 months.
You're working right next door.
I'm actually at the waterfall building. So just about 2 blocks away. And then I worked at Freeside for about 4. That was a really cool experience. And we did the interest stuff for him. And that's one of my favorite design thinking stories is about one of the challenges that we had to overcome on that. So, just some really great stuff, that's obviously.
Okay. So we're back again as normal. Good. So I'm
Ray Riley, this is my first time here. I'm a basic student. I've always been in technology. I started out in the aerospace field at Honeywell, went into health transformation technology at Honeywell, and loved every minute of it. My first project was on the guidance system, so we get probably the one
Wow.
made by myself right here in Minneapolis. But the big change, the career change, yes, I left Nedved on my own a few years ago as a consultant in healthcare and went all over the world, consulting on healthcare IT projects independently, competing with people like Dr. Anderson and Young and IBM and everything. And I had a ball doing that. So yes, it was a big change, and yes, it was wonderful. I would never go back. I never have a company meeting and arguing with the boss at all. 100 satisfaction.
That's good.
What I do now is just speaking and education on technology. I want to make sure everybody knows what's going on with mobile technology, and everything else is just much faster than the PC revolution or the computer revolution before that, and mobile technology thing, and all the Internet of Things and mobile payments and all of that stuff. I speak and write about that stuff. If anybody wants my newsletter, I'll just say the title on the last one was something you probably haven't seen before. And that was what Samsung can learn from Doubtman. What's that?
Rich Magel, Performance Incorporated, at least for the last one, dealing with clients primarily technically complex systems, manufacturing, telecommunications, all that kind of stuff. Provide performance support for division technicians, operators, avoid blowing things up and killing people. Prior to that, I started out an engineering degree on technical sales, industrial instrumentation business, stayed in that business, marketing, customer training, and started my own business. And we do it all over again the same way.
Good. You guys want to go?
I'm Susan Taylor. My company is SMT Enterprises Incorporated, and I'm working on a long-term contract with building education research content, developing training materials for technicians, mostly in appliance service and repair, but there have been some other topics too. Have you ever taken any looking to? Yeah. A lot of I started out as a regular classroom teacher. And then I got involved in e-learning development, and then that led me into instructional design, and then to consulting in instructional design, e-learning, and working, doing that on a company corporate viewpoint, and managing consultants, and then I stepping in management positions, and then started doing it on my own, so I started my own company, and then expanding from young training to performance, which used to be a slogan. So to look at words and I'm glad I did. It's been a long time. I like learning about everything.
I'm Tom Martin. I'm a instructional designer and developer. I work mostly contracts. I'm always looking for something new. I've had several different careers throughout my life. Started out as a film editor. I'm a retired military officer, and I've been doing for 20 years. And just working with a variety of different industries, medical, aviation, sales, seems like you name it, I've done something. But I'm glad I did it, yes. I'm glad it's very good. Hopefully keep doing it for a while.
Good.
They just changed it from my PC to OPW. Wow. Wait. always forget it when I see the initial. I have not really ever taken the road my career as a name of an expert. But I like to, yeah, I thought it would be good. You know, there's wrong to working on the direction to do. And I hope to be able to do it again.
Okay, my name is Tommy Borosco, or Mayor for short. So, I work for Anderson Windows, programming and performance specialist. So for that, I was working for an advice training specialist. But what makes my new job different is it's not only training, it's also performance consulting, you know, OD, everything that you can imagine about improving business performance. So I'm really happy where I'm at. Really, really rich. Have I taken any forward? I moved from nonprofit to for corporation, so that's a big change. I was years ago. So it was really glad I did that because it has been most satisfying for me because my nature, even though I like nonprofits, I don't really access right. So yeah, that changes.
Okay, next table.
Todd Russell. I am working for under contract with Capella University. With people. And it's an amazing place to work. The philosophy is so much different from working at a corporation that's trying to get training on the cheap. It's kind of nice to be a place that actually puts some reinforcements and actually believes in the educational process. As far as new roads, well, I've taken several roads here from starting at Control Data and then Authorware and then Allen Interactions and then US Bank and all these different things. But all those things have something in common, which is they were all focused on e-learning. And now I'm in a job that we don't do any e-learning. There's a whole other department that does it. We're not supposed to touch it. So it's different, but it's actually it's a good challenge for me because now I get to actually focus on the writing, and I love writing. I love focusing on the words and focusing on what you're saying and focusing on the process and just put so much meaning. So it's not just the technological whiz bang of learning, but it's more of let's actually use the right words to teach somebody how to do something. I love that challenge.
It's good.
My name is Lisa Alton. I am with the Minneapolis Public Schools and actually recently changed positions from there. I had been in the IT department and have been where the history of my past is a lot rooted with one nonprofit organization of different departments and different roles developed through the training capacity. So recently actually started in the professional development department as an instruction designer. So very excited about the transition and a big focus of my new role is my new this role is going to be building capacity across the organization for more e-learning and more online learning. We have we're a large organization and we're across the city with over 65 school sites, and so really looking at how can we do professional development differently, how can we have it more available, more on demand, and so it's a new position, so it's a new sort of it's a direction the organization's been taking and switching first to really more intentional work and really working at building that capacity and making it more.
I'm Julie Betsy here, and I just launched, relaunched my business, Peer Performance Solutions. I worked mid-November at the University of Minnesota Foundation, leading the team supporting the philanthropy around the university. And decided to go into business on my own. I've been doing something on the side, but now it's a full-time thing. So yes, I've taken a new road in my career. It's 2 months in. So far, so good. Prior to that, I made another shift. Before I went to the event, I was in consulting. I worked at consulting and research firms, several of them, working with big companies like Cargill, Mazda, Walgreens, big companies. And so I'm just kind of back in that consulting world now and really focus on what I want. My company is around performance enhancement. Training is an element, but leadership coaching and assessment is another. Operational assessment and improvements, primarily not manufacturing, more office and service type of more operational stuff. And then I also have a strong business intelligence background, so all types of research and analysis. So we do this spec. So it's all around performance enhancement, all those.
Hi.
Cool. I'm Lindsay D'Angelo, and I was told when I was little that everybody has 3 careers. Not enough. So, I have a bachelor's and master's degree in industrial psychology and I university of Maryland. So I've been in Maryland, I've been in hotels, Marriott corporations, I've been in Saudi Arabia, I've traveled absolutely the entire world. I have been in sales, I've been a director of sales, and a certified sales trainer, and I've been director of lead. Don't want to do that anymore. I want to do, I think, what you guys do. I'm here kind of exploring, because have you ever taken a new road in your career? I was in construction because right now I'm really giving back and helping people have the tools and skills they need to be better at what they do, instead of just making money for the corporation. Am I glad? I don't know yet. After 6 months, I'm like, what you do is really, awesome. So that's kind of what I am.
Sure. I'm Sherry Stern, and we're here because I used to work at Manufacturers Alliance, it's our last time here.
Yeah.
So enjoy. And now I'm a contractor for Capella University as an instructional designer. I'm loving that. And so it kind of comes around for me. I have worked in the healthcare industry as a recreation, hospital, psychiatric setting was my first career, and went into sales in the corporate world with AT&T and Exxon. I guess that would be my next career. Probably about 25 years in teaching and then training and then developing curriculum, different places, and then training and development and instructional design. So kind of come full circle for me back in the education world.
And thanks for hosting us tonight. We appreciate it.
Very good. Well, I learned a few new things about your backgrounds that I didn't know. I mean, I had no idea you were in the military. That's pretty cool. So hats off to you. Do we have any job needs or job leads tonight other than what you've stated? I didn't hear any leads, so if there's any job leads that you'd want to share, keep in mind, this is just one avenue. We also have a LinkedIn group, which is kind of underutilized, I would say. We have a LinkedIn MNISPI group, and you can find it by just searching Minnesota chapter of ISPI. But that is a good way to share job leads, and anyone with any member can post a job lead there. And I believe it's just up for 2 weeks and then automatically comes down. So, are there any job leads that anybody has that they know of tonight? Okay.
I noticed on my phone I've got something, somebody sent me something about construction design position for contract.
Mm-hmm.
About it. Maybe it's interested all.
Mm-hmm. Any celebrations that anyone wants to share tonight?
Your birthday.
And your birthday. This is for both January birthdays, yes. Yeah. And Lindsay's was just yesterday, so mine was last Thursday. And wow, we should have birthday cake. Wow, well, happy birthday.
Is special, but I did a calculation that shows that there's 20 million people that have the same birthday.
True. And speaking of the career paths on the previous slide, I heard a statistic once, which sort of was shocking, but I guess it's not as much nowadays, that most people go through 7 major careers in their lifetime. 7, not employers, but careers. It's like, wow. I think I've just had the 2. teaching and instructional design. But yeah, I guess I got time yet since I just turned 25. You know, I mean, really, I got plenty of time, right? So anyway, very good. As many of you know, we have 4 special interest groups, and I'll just spend a couple minutes talking about them since most of you are aware of them. The Book Banner SIG meets once a month. Actually, all of these meet once a month. The Consulting SIG for people that are independent consultants primarily. We've got the Digital Learning Forum for if you're interested in e-learning, technology, tools, and so forth. That group focuses on that. And then our brand new one, the e-learning SIG, which also meets once a month. And I'll just take a few minutes. I know the e-blast came out and gave details on the January meetings, but I'll highlight when the next meetings are for February. We also, as many of you know, kind of work with some of our sister associations, as I call them, like ATD, which I still want to say ASTD, right? But it's Association for Talent Development is their new name, and then PACT, which meets once a month, not too far from here in Golden Valley at the Metropolitan. But anyway, if you're interested in any of these groups, here's information. If you don't want to jot all this down, you can just go to our website, which is www.MNISPI.org to get information on all of our SIGs. But I just wanted to highlight a few here. A lot of these are free groups, by the way, too. Book Manor meets on this side of town in Crystal at the Rockford Road Library. And they pick either a topic or book or combination thereof to discuss each month. And I believe this month and next month, are you guys still on that book?
Still on that book, but along with the
topic. So they usually spend about 2 months on a book, right? Or varies depending on the book. Oh, wow. Okay. So that group is free and open to the public. The e-learning SIG is also free, and our focus is on learning articulate. And thanks to Tom, he shared some of his expertise late last year when we kind of kicked off this group. And our next meeting is February 5th. One side note to that group, one of the reasons we got this started is we thought as a nonprofit association, we would love to help another nonprofit association by providing them with free e-learning content or free e-learning modules, kind of a course or two. And we've selected the group that we want to work with. That is it Hope for Teens? I think it is. Hope for Youth. Okay, I was close. Hope for Youth, and I just saw a news segment on them like last week or something. It's like, wow, that's cool. So we're going to be eventually working with them to create basically some free courses. And in exchange, we're going to offset the cost of a new laptop. So we've already purchased the laptop to use, installed Articulate, which we got from Articulate. We got that free software. Storyline 2. Yep. Sorry. So we got that. We got a couple copies of that actually. And Tom, you were the recipient, I believe, of the other copy. So we'll be doing that. So if you're interested in that, come. Consultant SIG is like $10 a year, but you know, how cheap is that? They meet once a month as well. I believe it's the second Monday morning of each month, unless there's a holiday. And they meet over on the St. Paul side by Ford Parkway there. And their topics kind of vary, you know, so that's kind of a small group. Sure.
First of all, the Highland Cafe, the food and service is absolutely outstanding.
Fabulous.
Secondly, we always have a designated topic. And we have so many other interesting things to talk about, but we take pride in the fact that we almost never get to the designated.
That's funny. That's good. Oh, man. And, you know, if you're a real eager beaver, you'll attend that session in the morning, have breakfast, and then come to our digital learning forum usually that same night. We usually meet at the University of St. Thomas on the St. Paul side. What is it? It's right off Summit, but it's trying to think of the exit now. I want to say Cleveland. It's at Cleveland and Summit,
Right.
but what's the exit? I can't think of the exit. Cretin, that's it, Cretin. Our next topic is using Agile to manage learning projects, and this group is free. In fact, we almost had standing room only last week at our meeting. If those of you that were there, I mean, I literally ran out of handouts. We had like 30 some people in the room. It was like, ah. Pretty soon we're going to break the fire code in the room. But we also offer online meetings, just as MNISPI does now, typically with permission from the speaker. So, you know, if you're unable to attend, I know one of my friends had foot surgery recently. She's like, hey, I can't be there. I said, hey, you just log in for free, Adobe Connect, boom. It's almost as good as being there, except you can't meet anyone. So, but she's like, okay, cool, you know, so that's great. Any of you who are not members, keep in mind, this is one of the best professional associations around. It's fairly small, as you can see. And what's great is it's only $50. It's not, you know, like 160 like I just paid PACT, which, you know, I love PACT, but it, you know, it's sort of like shelling out $160 in January after Christmas gifts and all that. You know, it's sort of like, okay, fine, whatever, but it's a little spendy. So we're much more reasonably priced and even a better deal for students. You can go to our website and join or renew your membership, and of course talk to Sherry if you're interested in joining our group.
For a year, so now it's good.
Yep. So yeah, that's a good point. You can join anytime, and it's basically, if you would join tonight, which I know a couple of people did, then your membership's good till next January. So it's not based on, you know, like program year or anything like that. Although our programs run similar to the school year, September through May. So that's good. Also, I just want to mention that our professional association does have an annual conference, and I know you and I have attended. Anyone else has attended this? Susan? Okay. There's usually a few people there every year from Minnesota, which is great. And in fact, our speaker coming up in March, Maureen Conway, she will be presenting, and she attended along with Arnold and I last year when it was in Indianapolis. This year it's down in San Antonio. And you know, it is a little spendy, I gotta say, but it's so worth it. I mean, I literally was so torn last year. There were so many good programs going on that I downloaded a free app on my phone so I could record one session and be in another. The speakers are like, that's cool. Just, you know, don't forget your phone here after the session. But I literally recorded their whole session and was able to at least listen to the audio, because there was just like, I wanted to clone myself and be in multiple rooms. There were so many great sessions, and it's such a great networking opportunity. In fact, when I went to their website over the weekend, these are some of the things, you know, they talk about why should you attend. They have the 99-second presentations, but they also have the pachacha, or whatever, pachacha. And then, you know, just a lot of great workshops, so many, you know, and even before the session, they have some certification programs that you can attend if you want to, you know, get certified in different things. So lots of different opportunities for you to grow as a professional. And of course, this is our model that we use. You can look this up on the main ISPI website, which is right over there. But basically, if you're new to instructional design, I can send you the slide if you're interested, but you can also go to the website. But it is one of our guides when people say, what kind of methodology or model do you guys use? You can point to this. And in fact, I was just in an afternoon meeting where we were talking about doing gap analysis. So I'm like, yeah, been there, done that. Yeah, I didn't say that, but I'm like, yeah, I know how to do that. So that's helpful. So let's get started. I just wanted to point out too that we have another meeting coming up next month, February 17th, on upfront analysis. That will be purely, we will gather at the Byerly's in St. Louis Park, which is right off Highway 100. You just go south from here a few miles. And what's the cross street? 36 or something. It's near that Target on the east side, right? So that's where we will be next month. However, our speaker, Jenny, is a gal that I met. You met her too at the ISPI conference. Fabulous, very, very bubbly. She is coming to us from Michigan, so she won't be here as far as I know. She'll be sort of remotely broadcasting through our Adobe Connect or through our Google Hangouts session. So we'll still have the ability to ask her questions and such, but she is coming to us from the Detroit area. So just thought I'd mention that. And two more things real quick, and then Laura, you can get started. On your table, I just put a plethora of handouts. You'll see if you need this. This is also on our website, but for those of you, just like paper like me, I guess, there is our schedule, so you can get all the details. We are trying to move around a little bit more this year to accommodate, people on the west side that have said, hey, I don't want to always drive to St. Paul every month. So that's why we're having a couple meetings over here. However, we will be back in the TIES building in St. Paul in March. I also put a copy of the Digital Learning Forum handout on your table. So there's details on how to attend in person or online on that handout. And I was also asked to kind of promote a couple of ATD events. This is just the beautiful email printout in front of you. ATD, or formerly known as ASTD, they're having a networking opportunity tomorrow night. So if you're interested, it runs from 5:30 to 7:30, and all the details are on that first email. And then secondly, the ATD e-learning, yeah, $10. And then the ATD e-learning SIG is having their meeting, I believe next Wednesday night, the 28th. And that's not too far in Edina, the Edina Library, also south on 100. And there's directions if you're not familiar with how to get there, the Vernon Avenue exit. So that's in the emails. And then last but not least, PAC said, can you help promote this event? They're having an e-learning workshop with Jane Hart. I don't know Jane. Does anybody know her? I'm not really.
Oh, yeah. She's great.
Is she pretty well known?
Yeah, she's with Jake Frost and those guys in the Internet Time Alliance. So she's very big on social learning.
Oh, okay.
Really, she's from England.
Oh, wow. So she's not local then.
No.
So no wonder they want us to try to publicize.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the long flyer. If you register before February 4th, you get a $20 discount currently. But you realize, especially if you have your own company, you can write off a certain percentage of this as expenses, professional association, workshop kind of expenses. So it's nice to know, especially if you itemize, that is. And last but not least, did you invite anyone tonight? I know I did. Sherry did? You did? Oh, all right. So we actually have a bona fide drawing then. Yay! Okay.
We have people paying who are part of the.
Yeah, exactly. So what I can do is, why don't I just do this? Sorry, I'm not as prepared that I didn't bring this.
I have some.
You wanted this in, because normally we do it at the end, but then then I gotta work off name tags and stuff. But why don't you just put your name on here? I brought you Gary, sort of. I provided you with info.
That's what comes for a claim, I guess.
So here's what I want you to do. I want you to put your name if you're a member. Okay, good. So you're way ahead of me. Yeah, so the member, put your name down, and the guest, put your name down. I've got 2 little gift cards here. Same denomination, so it's, there's no advantage to it, but.
Yeah. Oh, you are in it. You brought it in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. I have my name written down.
Oh, and Sherry, you're in it too, right? All right, so who wants to draw 2 names?
I got it.
Yeah, are you in it, Gary?
Yep, I have.
Okay, you got it.
What's your name?
Okay.
Everybody.
All right, so pick one. Okay.
Lisa.
Lisa. And one more.
Hey.
Hey, all right. So I will give you a gift card, and each month now, between now and March, oops, sorry. Whoa. And with the price of gas, that helps. So between now and March, every month, 2 gift cards. So as an incentive to you and your guests, welcome to bring guests, because like I say, we're kind of a unknown professional association.
Thank you guys so much for having me here tonight. I can't remember, was it you, Sherry?
Yeah. Well,
Was it-
luckily, because I saw your.
I thought so. You should have put my name in again for you. Yeah, so thank you so much. It's kind of a topic that's near and dear to my heart, the whole design thinking area. And in part, I think because I kind of stumbled into the field from probably a lot of the same areas that you guys are stumbling into it and don't even realize it. I started out, again, doing corporate training, working for Allen Interactions. Actually, I had some experience before that, but came into Allen Interactions and was there for almost 10 years. And after leaving there, one of my neighbors happened to call me. He was teaching in an adult basic ed center, teaching computer labs there. He was going on vacation. He said, hey, you know computers, you know training. I need somebody to stand in for me. I thought, great, sure, no problem. So I showed up there to help him out. And first thing I realized is that these are people who really don't know how to use computers. And I'd been working, training GE's corporate accountants on GAAP and IFRS, and I was doing Boston Scientific, and I was working with Daimler Chrysler engineers. And you can get away with an awful lot and some real creative interfaces with those people, and you don't have to worry about it. They get it, they figure it out, and they're not intimidated by it. But to see somebody who's actually sitting there with a deer in the headlights look, staring at the computer, afraid to touch the mouse, or when they do, they get it turned around backwards so that they're mousing like this, because they don't, and they drive it like a car because they think that that's how it's supposed to be driven. So there are a lot of different, challenges that when you really look into the audience and your end user, there are so many challenges that we just don't even see, I think, when we're given a project like, we need to create new hire training. Okay, let's do it. And, here's the stuff we're teaching, and go for it. And you really don't get a chance to interact that much with the end user. Sometimes you never actually get to talk to them at all. You never even see them when the training has gone out to the field. So they're pretty much on their own. So the whole idea of design thinking then is really taking that user-centered perspective of it and saying, okay, can we put the user in the center and still make this a really viable business product? How do we do that? What does that look like? It needs to be financially sustainable. It needs to work for the business model, but really focus on the learner. And so there are just so many things that I stumbled across, and I'd love to share some of that with you here. One of these is this idea of business model innovation. That's actually a book that is really very interesting to pick up if you get a chance. Talks about resource-driven versus offer-driven. The ways that businesses are taught and the ways like MBA programs are taught. Businesses are really built for the business. They're not really built for the end user or their, the new hires that they bring in there. That was really never the purpose. These are just the people that are being brought in to support that vision and that goal. But if we take it another step and go, okay, what if we just looked at the end user on that? What if we really looked at the customer, or in our case, the learner, and take a look at it from that perspective? So this is actually a UX tool called an empathy map. And if you take a look at this dude in the middle, all the stuff that is around him, what is he thinking and feeling, what's he seeing, hearing, saying, doing, that's usually not information that we incorporate into our training. We kind of get the back end of it from the business side. We get into the pain and the gain a little bit, but really there is an awful lot going on there that we can incorporate into our training. And not so much from a workload perspective, but just from a consideration perspective. What's this person thinking? What's important to him? What are his 3 goals to get out of this training? Is he hoping he knows how to move the mouse? Have we asked him if he knows how to move the mouse? What does he feel is important and what motivates him? Are we training in a way that motivates our learners? We think we are because we know what we're doing because we've been doing this for 17 years, right? Well, maybe not. If you've got somebody who's terrified or who's just coming into this industry, they might be completely overwhelmed on their first day of work because, there's a lot of stuff going on your first day at a new job. And we don't know how these people react. And we never really ask them, what's their environment like? Are they expected to take the training or work in a noisy environment? And have we actually considered that? What's the environment we're trying to train in? What's the environment they're working in? Who's surrounding him? Who's supporting him? Does he have anybody supporting him? We often don't ask that. And if the answer is no, they really don't, then we probably need to build that support into the training in a way that is accessible for them. What do they do what they say they do? Or, what are they really doing? And one of my favorite examples of this goes back to the VIA course that I think, Bob, you probably worked out with me 100 years ago. And we went out to the factory and went through this whole process. They showed us everything that was happening on the manufacturing floor so we could simulate this in this environment. And one of the guys had a glove shoved in the case to this like steam case. They were pulling wires through this system, making telephony cables. And there's a place they got to where he said, oh, if this isn't sealing, we just shove a glove in there. Well, the engineer found out about that and he's just having a meltdown because it throws all of his specs off. He's got this precision system and they found this way to make the system work, but it was skewing all of the metrics that they were trying to accomplish. So, there were reasons they were coming up with bad wire on certain lines and at certain times. So are they really doing what they're supposed to be doing? And what does he listen to in his environment? Who does he listen to? Is the person in charge really the person who's in charge? A lot of times there's a leader on the floor that is not the designated leader. And why does he listen to that specific influencer? And then take a look at what his pains and his gains are. What are his pains and frustrations that our training can help? Have we actually talked to him about that? What are his biggest obstacles and how big are they? And what does he stand to lose and what additional pain might we cause by creating that training for them? Are we actually considering the output of that and what changes might come? What does he stand to gain from the training? What does success look like for him? We often project what we think success looks like, but is that true? Is that accurate? And how will he know when he has succeeded? So all these little factors are really about the learner and really nothing about somebody shoving a new hire course. This was a fun one. So I'm going to take a step back from the empathy map because this was a project I worked on it was actually a collaborative project with a group out of Portland State University, LearnerWeb. LearnerWeb is a project software tool that was designed to help adult basic ed learners basically meet their educational goals. A lot of these people were followed in a longitudinal study for like a decade by this group out of Portland State. And they found that people who dropped out of college actually were still trying to learn, but they were doing it sort of in a disorganized fashion. So they were struggling to really reach their goals. So and some of these people were trying to obtain citizenship. Some of them were trying to just get a GED, but they didn't really know how to do it. So they were just taking classes, or they'd find something online and they would read it, or they'd go meet with an attorney or some class that was held locally, but it was really disorganized. So this group took this, created this training, this software called Learner Web, and it was designed so that these adult basic ed centers could create a learning path for them. And the path here was, the idea was that they were going to take this path and get from, through their GED and be able to go on to a community college. So they had asked me to see what the feasibility was for incorporating this Learner Web technology into some of the current training programs that they had. So I went out and I actually interviewed some of these centers, and there were like 4 of them that I actually interviewed. So this is just a little snippet of the project. But I went through, and you can see the learner path up here. So we've got these swim lanes across here. One for the learner, one for the teacher administrator, one for physical and computer-based tools, and the other one is for the Learner Web integration itself. And going through here, I actually sat down with these people at these centers and said, okay, when they come in, how did they come into this center? How do they get referred? How do they find out about you? What's the next step? Well, they sit down and they fill out paperwork, okay? And we truly went through this interview process where I mapped out the entire process from the learner's perspective, from the teacher and administrator perspective, and then I mapped those together on those orange lines across there. Those are the touch points. So knowing that they wanted this Learner Web software to be able to take over some of this functionality, so you've got to build in touch points where the computer is then taking over those areas where there would normally be an administrator, somebody to guide it. That's where you need to be able to make sure that the software is filling in for you. There were also a lot of dead ends I ran across, which was kind of interesting because you don't think about that when you're working, you show up for your job, you're helping people, and you don't think about, well, what happens when I say, no, you don't qualify? They walk out the door, where does this person go? If they wanted to learn something, are they just standing in the parking lot going, okay, now what do I do? So I was able to actually put these lozenges up here where it's like, well, is there a referral place for this person? What happens? And so they were able to actually go through and fill in some holes in their system. And then by going along tracking here, this was their existing hardware, software, the tools that they were using, some of the tests that they were using. And then these were the areas where Learner Web could actually help the process and how, and what the restrictions were that they would have to add in. You'll either have to add in this type of technology to the Learner Web software or something of that nature. So where they would have to shore up the software itself to be able to accommodate some of these needs. So that really is, this is where it's pulling in the users, the empathy for the user, focusing on the user's experience, but really making it feasible for the rest of the organization to actually make something useful out of it. This is a 5-stage model that you'll find a number of models out there. If you start researching design thinking, you'll find 5-stage models, 7-stage models. I just wanted to put a couple up here. You can kind of see that a lot of these actually are things that we already do in the training world. Actually, they're pretty much all what we do. A lot of it is, it sounds like iterative prototyping, iterative development, agile. It's, if you look at the beginning stages, it's a little bit addy. So we're used to that model already. This is a 7-stage model. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on this one because basically what this does is it breaks out that first piece. So the defined focus point of that, is really broken out into understanding, observing, and defining it. And then we get into the ideation, prototyping, and test. So understanding. Okay, it's really like a big quest when you go out there in the design thinking world, which makes it kind of fun. You're out there, what you have to do is you have to learn about the problem. You're talking with your SMEs and your stakeholders, and you're engaging these learners and end users, and sketching the journey. And I'm going to talk about the tools that I use on these two so that you guys can kind of explore some of those tools because they come from different disciplines. 5 whys. So anybody familiar with Lean Six Sigma is familiar with the 5 whys. So this is your journey, and your quest is to discover the who, what, when, where, why, and how of these learners and end users. And your tools are basically sticky notes, the empathy map, and I gave you a separate copy of that because it's kind of nice to have that and actually hang it on your wall so you kind of remember when you're building something, who are you really building it for? So we've got sticky notes, empathy maps, and the journey map, which is what I just showed you on that page with the adult basic ed. And don't be afraid to sketch. Low fidelity prototyping and sketching is really, it almost felt like cheating to me, I think, until I got into the UX world and spent the last 3 years on the board of the User Experience Professionals Association. And prototyping and sketching, low fidelity sketching is totally acceptable. It's like, it's no cost, low cost, and you can get an idea out there. And if you need to tweak it, there's very little investment in it. So grab a sticky note, grab a piece of paper and a pencil, grab colored pencils.
Is that also called wireframing?
It can be if you turn it into a wireframe. Wireframing is really more like into the prototyping stage. Mm-hmm. This is really just like the back of the napkin kind of sketching. So your journey here in the observation stage, you're going to watch how people behave and interact, observe spaces and places, you're going to ask them questions, you're going to create the empathy maps, and you're going to reflect on that journey. I did an international service jam a year ago. Fascinating experience. You know, you're sequestered in a room for a weekend, and there's basically a group. This one group was in England. They sent out a big to-do all over the world. Everybody at the same time opened up this email, and we got our assignment for the weekend. And the assignment was an oddly shaped graphic. It wasn't quite a box. If you folded it up, that was all they gave us. They said, here it is, go for it. And the idea was to actually use some of these tools that we'll be talking about to brainstorm ideas. What might this be? What could this possibly be? And what could we make it into? And it created such a mass of creativity and energy in that room that the whole weekend was filled with it. So if you ever get a chance to do one of these jams, I totally encourage it. I was a little bit concerned because it was the weekend thing. I thought, is that going to just kick my butt for the whole week? But it didn't. I actually came out of there recharged and sort of rejuvenated from it. So what's that? Oh, Taylor Larson was the guy who was organizing that. It's a group out. It was a group out of England that kicked it off. Service Jam International, I think was what you're going to talk about. And I don't know that they have one here every year because I think it is kind of a lot. You've got to get a space for the whole weekend, and there's a lot of work to pull together. But again, in this space, your quest is to discover who, what, when, where, why, and how. In that situation, we came up with some ideas of what this thing could be, and then separated those out based on categories. So there are actually themes you can kind of go, oh, it's a disposable casket, okay. So, and that actually came up a few times. So the group of us went out into the field and we said, well, maybe we could do something, maybe it's about people's living space. It could be a portable living space. And then we needed to find out how people personalize their living space. So we went across to the downtown public library, started talking to people, asking them, and you get turned down by a few people over there, but for the most part, people were willing to talk with us. Interestingly enough, a number of homeless people were interested in talking with us about how they personalize their space. We're like, what space does a homeless person have? Turns out it's what they can carry on their back. And that spurred an entire weekend of creativity. We came out of it with a wearable device that could be used for, like therapy, and psychologists could work with people. They would read your biorhythms and your, all of your biosigns, and if you were in stress, it would automatically ping your mentor, and they'd call you and say, hey, I'm here, what do you need? So this was the idea that we came up with out of this box, and after wandering across the street and interviewing these people at the library. So, you want to get out on your quest, and you want to talk to people, because you get it's such a wealth of information when you do that. And your tools, when you're doing that, you've got sticky notes, you've got empathy maps, you've got journey maps, you've got interviews. So come up with just a list of questions to be able to pose to these people, to ask them, how they plan to use this, how do they think it will affect them, how they currently use their space. Oh, and you might need a really cool saber along the way, so, you know, just have that in your back pocket. Never hurts. So defining, this is focusing on the point of view. So your journey at this stage is, you know, you're defining the issue, you're identifying your audience a little bit more clearly, you're prioritizing steps in here, you're drafting user personas. So, a little comment there. Define success from the learner's perspective. So, you know, it's all about me from the learner perspective. Your quest, again, is the 5 whys. But here, what you want to do is add in these personas and affinity diagrams. So at this stage, I'm adding the personas because, and I don't know if any of you have actually done much with personas in your job, but it's very much a UX tool. But when you create a person, you have something to refer to. You have a way of making it human. On another project I was working with the Fast Track group, and this was at Portland State group, they had to find a way through their very complicated nonprofit government process for getting these people through their general ed requirements, and that includes testing and recording this data and moving them, you know, between facilities, because sometimes they move around a lot, and maybe trying to track them into a community college. So there's a lot of tracking, a lot of trying to stay on top of people. There are issues with people even being able to get to the facility. You know, there are people who lose their homes. You know, I had a house yesterday, I don't have one today. I had a car yesterday, I don't have one today. How do you get them there? How do I get the bus? I don't have any money, I don't have a job. So there are some social issues in some of these environments that we've never had to deal with, thank God. So, you know, when you're taking a look at these people and saying, okay, let's create a person that we can actually talk to or talk about and see how we would move that person through our system. And this works beautifully when you're trying to create training, because you can actually take a look at it and go, okay, I'm going to throw this up on the LMS, and Johnny's going to sign on in, you know, Portland, and he's going to, you know, jump on, he's going to take this training. Well, do they even know how to get to the LMS? Is there somebody there who can tell them how to get to the LMS? You know, what type of computer does he have? And we just, you know, I just heard about a project going on over in India where somebody flew over there and then the computers weren't working the same way they did here. So what is that experience? And, you know, just walk through it in your mind, what you're putting the learners through. And you can kind of smooth out a number of the ruffles and the bumps along the way just by thinking that far in advance. Personas do not have to be really, really detailed. They don't even have to be a real person. They can be a compilation of people. So you might pick some elements from 3 different people and combine them together and say, okay, well, we've got this, you know, person who, well, let's make this one 50 years old, and it's a woman instead of the man we interviewed. And let's say she's got 3 kids, because this person over here had a couple of kids and that was challenging. So you can actually mix and match personas and, you know, people to create your persona. It really just needs to be something that you can really work on and make it a personal experience. Affinity diagrams are nothing but sticky notes. So from the UX community, you can take a problem, and if you frame it in a way that you're getting input from a lot of people, give them a stack of sticky notes and have them go up to the wall and just say, okay, what's this topic about? What's this? You know, one example is one of the groups that we worked with had gone to a laundromat, and they were going to see what people did there, how long it took them, how much time they spent there, what they did while they were there. And they found out a lot of information about laundromats, including, you know, what happens if you come there and you don't have change? What happens if you come, you know, is there an ATM machine there or ATM there that you can actually, you know, get your cash out of? Is there, you know, do you have to walk 5 miles down the street to the bank? How, you know, what's the environment like there? And you can usually categorize these things in chunks, like environment, or, you know, entertainment, or the machines aren't always working. So maybe it's, you know, technology interference with something, or no Wi-Fi. And you could go through and you can kind of categorize experiences, and you can see after you've talked to a number of people what a lot of their issues are. And they clump together. So then on that affinity diagram over here, you can see these little blue spots. These would actually be the headers. So you would categorize those under headers, and you can keep rolling those up higher and higher so that you can actually like, you know, build a new site, you know, or design some specs that are addressing those issues. Now, when you think about it at that point, usually something is built by designing the specs and then building it out to spec, but you're not considering the learner at that point. So if you actually get the learner's input and then roll that up into specs and say, oh, what do the specs need to be to address the user's concerns, you get a whole different experience out of that. But keep your saber handy. So need finding and benchmarking. So at this point in your journey, you're going to be talking to the end users, reviewing the history, and not just the history of the users, but also the history of the project. That turns out a lot of information too. Is this the third time they've created that new, customer service training because it hasn't been effective? We've never had to do that, but recording obstacles that they'll have, documenting their prior attempts to solve this issue, and then talking to stakeholders, supporters, investors, critics, everybody. The more of a mix you can get, the more fidelity you'll get in the end result, and review the opinions of thought leaders too. So your quest here, so what's needed and by whom and at what time and at what location and why do they need it and how do they get it? And what are these gaps and gray areas that are in your thinking? So, you're kind of starting to accumulate a huge amount of knowledge here. This is where drawing that out and having sticky notes or a journey map is starting to really be helpful, because you can kind of see these gray areas and these gaps and the roadblocks popping out. So look for undiscovered paths. Is there a better way then, as you're mapping this out and finding out where they want to go? What's the better way? There probably, most things in life, there probably is a better way or a shortcut. So look for that. Where might our hero or learner just like fall off a cliff? Have we actually, have we left him hanging or left a gaping hole that he might fall into? Your tools here, you'll be doing ethnography, interviews, personas, journey maps, prototypes, and yes, using sticky notes again. Body storming and ideation. This I really find fascinating. You get into the ideation stage, and one of the interesting things about body storming in particular is that you actually kind of create a simulated environment. If you have to bring somebody to a new area, work area, something, you might use a cardboard box for their new computer. It's not real by any means. One thing that comes to mind, I was planning to buy a new couch. It was quite a bit, it was a different configuration than my other one. It was an L-shaped couch. Wasn't sure how it would fit in my living room because it's not that big. And I thought, well, am I gonna hate this a month after I have to walk around it? So I took masking tape and I taped out where the couch would be on the floor. I actually measured it out in the store, went home, measured it out on the floor, and then I moved everything around to where I would have it, and I walked around it for a week. Like, oh, this is really comfortable. Yeah, I like that. So, rather than buying it and then getting it home and going, wow, I've got 3 inches to get between here and the wall, I was able to find out that yes, it did in fact work before I actually put any effort into it other than masking tape. And you can do the same thing with body storming and the ideation. Your quest, look around and say, okay, so we're coming up with these ideas. Who else might be a stakeholder here that we haven't addressed? Legal, IT. In fact, finding models from different industries are good. Bring in your unique perspectives. Seek out silo breaking opportunities here. So if you've got a problem, it might be, maybe your corporate standards don't actually say what to do with e-learning. Okay, well, maybe you need to talk to your marketing department and let them know that this is an issue and you're going to make up your own if they don't collaborate with you on this. Discover these new opportunities. This is where, this project that I worked with Lisa on at Toro was really fascinating, because partway through here we found that the dealers weren't able to, they were supposed to send in these safety reports, but the website wasn't really user-friendly for them. Some of them didn't know how to use the website anyway. Some of them were faxing the information in. And Lisa, God bless you, she got legal on board, she got the website developers on board, and they built this system where it was actually, oh, we need an automated system and it needs to be the same for everybody. So we don't have people handwriting notes and faxing them in. We want, people to fill out standardized information. And it was just a beautiful, elegant solution to that. So yeah, talk with her about that if you want more information on how that went down. But it involved getting teams together that were not part of the training team. But in fact, they needed to be part of that at that moment because this was not a decision that, that anybody else would have been able to make. But they did it and it worked beautifully and yay. Well done, Lisa. So in these tools here, you really want to get creative, really creative, and it really does help the process. Improv tools, improv warm-up tools. This was kind of fascinating to me because I didn't really realize how much improv is infiltrating the business world. And actually, if we can take a few minutes, I'd love to do a little exercise. If you guys can stand up maybe, and if we can kind of divide the room into two groups. And these kind of exercises are actually really good if you're going to be doing a brainstorming meeting to get people out of their environment. And in fact, maybe why don't we do 3 different groups? If you can, maybe people back here, this group over here, and then you guys there can kind of clump together. And you'll want to stand, kind of close enough that you can toss. So get into a little circle there. Okay. So, and this actually was beautiful. There was a guy that he had brought in for a presentation, and he is actually a product development guy, MIT grad. But what he does, what he shows us is how it's fascinating you can get to pull people out of their business environment, away from their cell phones, away from what they've been doing all day, and put you into the little circle to actually throw an improv game at you, and all of a sudden you're nowhere near where you were. So I'm going to have each of you guys, I'm going to throw you each a different word. And we're going to have, I'm going to say it to you, you're going to point to somebody else, you actually have to point and speak the word. You have to say the next word that comes to mind and point it to somebody else. Okay? So, yes. Snowball. Shoes. Sweater. Summer. Thunder.
Oh, yeah.
Melanoma. Citizen Academy.
Okay, we'll go ahead and stop it there. What is snowball? Oh boy.
What do we end up with? We have a great.
We ended up with rubber.
Okay. Sweater too. Needles, okay.
Like 3 times around.
I heard something weird about melanoma. Okay, so you can go ahead and stop it. But then, there's nobody checking their cell phone. There's nobody thinking, oh gosh, I've got another meeting coming up in some minutes. It really does pull you out of active and into a really creative space where you guys wandered. You really wandered into some creative ideas. So if you can bring that kind of creativity into the group, you can kind of get a whole new experience too and a whole new level of that. So that kind of gets into mind mapping too. Mind mapping is a great way to pull out some new ideas, use colors. Usually a mind map is a little bit more structured, where you're talking about colors or drawing pictures, coming up with concepts. Also a very useful tool though, and you can actually use that even to design interfaces. You can tear magazines apart and ask people, what color do you really like here? What one is attractive? What pulls to you? And you can do that with fonts. You can really kind of get in depth on that. But yeah, it usually involves tearing up a magazine, but they can be recycled that way. So then we get into the prototype and building stage. So your journey here, you're mapping the path, you're identifying additional user needs, because those always come up when you're prototyping. It's when you actually start to build stuff that you all of a sudden go, oh, yeah, we do need a mentor. Although if you had, done something a little further up, you probably would have found out from the learners that they might need a mentor in here. But if you hadn't, then prototyping and building it would help with that. Go back and cover your learning objectives. Have you done that in your training? Brainstorming ideas for the build, anchoring it to the corporate vision. I'd heard that something like 85% of the people in any organization are making a decision on a daily basis. So every day in an organization, 85% of people are making, it might be small, might be big, but they're making a decision. Only like 15% of the people in any organization can actually articulate the corporate vision. So, so where they're going, you don't know, but they're going somewhere, and they will make their own, they will build their own path if you don't help them with that. So in your quest here, you're building scaffolding, your route, the routes, the bridges, the shelter, the entertainment, because training can be an entertaining factor. It doesn't need to be droll. Communication forums, do they need something where they can communicate with each other or outside? Include your guides and helpers there. Your quest, you're going to refine the ideas through iterative prototypes. You're creating and presenting working prototypes, and you're getting feedback from the SMEs and stakeholders. Watch out for dragons, misunderstood user perspective here, gaps and misunderstandings, and the team stress is really kind of killer. So keep your saber there for the dragons. This is an interesting project, one I worked on recently, that I was handed the sort of the document that was the path through the train that I was supposed to build this training off of. It's like, this is how this works, these are the steps. And I kept reading this Word document, reading it, and I thought, this is not making sense. It just doesn't feel like it's complete. So I threw it into Visio, mapped it out. All the red boxes are the dead ends and gaps. And this was just a portion of it, but the whole document looked like this. And I thought, well, there's a reason I didn't understand what I was building. And I still maintain if you can't draw it, you can't build it. So, it's like telling an architect you want to buy, telling your contractor you want to build a 3-bedroom house and he has no plans to do it. But this is, this is kind of a gotcha. If you're handed something and you can't sketch it out, it doesn't need to be in Visio. You could do this on a napkin with a marker and crayons or whatever you got.
It's true, though, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
It is. When I took that back to them, they kind of went, oh, hello.
Yeah, and sometimes, a 5-page memo or something can be boiled down to one diagram real easy, and then suddenly light bulbs turn on. Oh, now I understand what your group does and how they do it.
Yes. In fact, something like over 60% of the world are visual learners, and yet so much of what we do is text. So I'm not sure what that's about, but I'm trying to become a more visual person and a better artist, because my drawing skills, my boxes are pretty shaky. My diagrams are kind of crazy, which is why I love Visio. But so there you get into the testing and learning piece, and your journey is to test these paths and structure, to smooth out the path, get your users involved, divide and conquer the feedback, and confirm that you've met their needs. Post signs, let people know that your bridge is starting to open, because oddly enough, there needs to be sort of a marketing component to what we do. And we don't really consider that. We just sort of say, oh, we'll throw it up on the LMS and somebody will be told they have to go take a training. Really? It just seems a little harsh and a little like we didn't really think through the whole how we're going to invite our learners into this. But we can guide them to that path and let them know that it exists there, and they're welcome to come and browse with us.
Yeah, because when you build it, they will come. Doesn't always work.
Does not work, no. Yes, you do.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So your quest, then you're reviewing issues and objectives. You have to integrate that feedback. Assess the user experience. If at any point you can get that feedback from the learners or actually watch them doing it, oh man, that's your picture being worth 1,000 words. Choose and promote some of the strongest ideas to deliver. So if something comes up in that testing session that's a really powerful idea, we can't be afraid to at least speak up and say, what, this really, really should go in here. Calling out the troops for support, IT and legal. Is there something we've come across here that just needs some other support outside of the training department? And know your boundaries. Why did we leave out what we left out? it's not that we can't, we all have to put boundaries on here. There's a, boundary box, and again, Lean Six Sigma, but you really need to make purposeful decisions on that and say, we're not including that in the training. This is out of scope. This isn't, this is where we're ending this course at, and you got to do that for scope and for business practice. But, and then our tools to revisit, our empathy map, we can expand this to other stakeholders. If you start building your training and realize that, hey, legal has some stake in here, it's okay to build another empathy map out. Corporate attorneys deserve empathy too. And create your empathy maps for other stakeholders, and then update your standards document. So we get into lessons learned. Your journey, return home safely and leave no man or learner behind. And how many of us have looked like this at the end of creating a training piece? So you want to, at that point, if we can survey our learners, that's a great place to get feedback from. Collect data and measurements if we can, evaluate success or not, and document future improvements. Don't just say, okay, it's out there, it's great. Through the lessons learned or whatever feedback you can get, actually document that someplace and keep that and, queue it up for, may not be, until 6 months or next year's budget comes around, but at least have that on the books somewhere where it doesn't get kicked aside and, learners are going, wow, I really wish this would do it. I told them about it a year ago and nothing's happened. So just kind of keep in mind, being able to document those future improvements is really nice. Ask what else can be done. Is this enough? Is there a little side piece that now pops up from doing your journey map? You kind of go, well, we didn't include this, but we could really easily create something that would address that issue as well. And empathy maps work for team members too. So don't forget your team. Don't, leave no man behind, including your teammates. So, take a temperature check around your team and say, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How's it working for you? Are you okay? Do you have what you need? And in this stage, you'll be using the ethnography, surveys, results data, team celebrations, and your wish list for future iterations. So to kind of go over some of the tools we went through the empathy maps, we went through sticky notes, they'll be your best friend, affinity diagrams, journey maps, interviewing, user personas, where it's all about me, storyboarding, and then interactive prototypes. I believe that's a prototype of the Apple one. Yeah, so, and again, prototypes can be low fidelity. Don't be afraid to do that. It's just an incredible tool, and it's easier to chuck a design away that costs you a piece of paper and a pencil than it is to throw something else away. Questions? Thoughts, stunned silence.
What's an ethnography?
Ethnographies are really, it's really interviewing people. Yeah, you're going to get out there, you're going to watch what they're doing. Like if you wanted to put a user in a room, sometimes people will use like mirrored rooms for like focus groups and actually watch what they're doing on the computer, and then interview them afterwards and find out, what their opinion was about it. Actually, Capella does, I think, some of theirs with, they do some focus groups on some of theirs. Actually, I participated in one of them because I'm like, oh, they call it, I don't know, they got my name somewhere. I'm like, oh, I'd love to do that. So, yeah, so they've got some stuff. The University of Minnesota has a really interesting department in the basement of Wilson Library. They do the eye tracking, so you can actually see what people are doing on a computer. That would be in our environment. But one situation I heard of where someone had their office changed around. They had new technology coming in. So they were losing their binder, their books, whatever their old way of recording something was. They were losing that, and they were getting a new computer to take care of all this. So they came in one day, binders were gone, desk was here, new computer's here. Hello, there's your new experience, go for it. So, watching, probably the stunned look on this person's face when they're kind of going, okay, I guess, today's the day I'm supposed to change over. I have no idea what I'm doing. Where do I go? What do I do? How do I find this stuff? Watch for those reactions and explore those a little bit, because that can be pretty revealing too. Other questions?
Maybe it's in there somewhere, but I didn't see it. Excuse me. if you're, at what point do you ask, given whatever the, performance targets that you're shooting at, at what point do you ask whether training is even a useful thing to be
if it's the right
considered?
solution or not?
Yeah.
That actually comes up pretty early on. When you start talking with people about their needs and about their goals and about what they're doing from that first empathy map, and they're saying, well, I'm shoving a glove in here. It's like, that's not, you can't be doing that, okay? It's not in the specs, it's not in the instructions, don't do that. And then it's like, well, is it really a training issue or is it a performance issue? But you can help sift through some of those.
Well,
through
would
that.
probably, the other question is the process issue. Why is the person doing this? They're doing this because there's something else that ought to be happening, but it's not.
Yeah.
And so
You're trying to fix this
Yeah,
yourself. Let's
yeah,
get
they're
the
doing the
crew
best they
in that's
can.
supposed
Yeah.
to fix this, and why aren't they on top of it? And
and none of that, all that has nothing to training problem.
no, it's like, oh, you don't have a hotline to call this guy to get over here and fix the machine, so you're
Yeah.
fixing it yourself. Okay. Right. Yeah, you will see the performance issues sort out from the training issues pretty easily, pretty quickly. And you'll probably find a lot more than you thought you had, because that tends to come up when you start mapping that out. And they're making decisions and you're like, well, that's really a process thing. And why are we sending them off here and we're not telling them where to go or find this information or giving them anything to support that? So in that one where I had that red boxes around a number of those things, the areas where the document I was supposed to build from was missing information, those were some of the issues in there. It's like there was supposed to be a decision made by the learner. There was nothing to tell them what they do with that decision if it ends up being A instead of B. So the process just wasn't mapped out. Other questions?
Of all these tools, which would you say you use the most?
Wow.
The most helpful?
Can I pick more than one? I do a lot of interviewing. I do a lot of journey maps. I don't use so many sticky notes now because I really do like using Visio. And it's kind of, it's pretty easy and fast for me to throw something into Visio. So, but the nice part about sticky notes is that you can do it, before you ever get to that point. You can be sitting in a room talking with someone during an interview and actually be, making little sticky notes to help show that visual picture for them. A lot with interactive prototypes. I do a lot with personas. Quite a bit with storyboarding, although when I get to the storyboarding, I've gotten really fast with storylines. So I usually storyboard right in Storyline because it's the tool you're going to be building in. And I have found when I was building, I produced and created a mobile app a year and a half ago. And College Chooser, for those of you with any teenagers anywhere around your life, it's available in the iTunes store. But it's what I found was that the idea actually came to me trying to get my daughter through this process of getting her off to college and, trying to decide on which colleges she was going to apply to, which kids are supposed to apply to like 7 to 10 colleges now. And there are 7,000 of them in the college search databases. So you give them, and then they're supposed to look at the websites for these colleges and talk to their friends and talk to their teachers and attend the college meetings that they bring to their schools. And, my daughter was sitting on the couch, deer in the headlights look, and she was just like overwhelmed. She had notebooks around her. She just had this horrible mess of research. And she was like ready to melt down. I'm like, I got to stop this. This is just painful to look at. So I went to Storyline and I prototyped something. I said, just write down. She had like 20 of them on a list. I said, just write them down for me. So I canned it and put it in there so that it would pop up 2 at a time. And I said, if you get accepted to, either one of these, which one would you choose? So she went through, and then it was just a binary decision. So then it was like, intuitive decision making. And she was able to go through, and she sat back, and interestingly enough, where she had put in a lot of colleges on the East Coast, not a single one of them came up in the top. They were all way at the bottom. She looked at me, she said, maybe I don't want to go to the East Coast as much as I thought I did, because everything that was on the top was, Midwest to California. I'm like, well, maybe not. If given a choice of actually being accepted into those colleges, you would not choose them, then maybe that's not the choice that you want to make. So from that, I was actually I started looking into, well, how do I make this into a mobile app? And I took I started looking at Storyline, but it wasn't robust enough. So I thought, okay, well, then I've got to look at what these tools really are. So then I started exploring how, it's easy to make a mobile app. All the books will tell you. So I started looking into stacks and stacks of those, and I thought, oh, this is so not me. There's a reason I just quit down that. I started out studying computer science 100 years ago, and I think I was in the middle of my Pascal class, and I thought, I hate this. I really hate this. So I changed and went into communication. I loved it. And, it was kind of that sort of same feeling, like, I really don't like, I like creating that idea and coming up with the idea. I don't like sitting here programming iOS stuff, Xcode. So then I went off and searched and found somebody who could do it. But showing him my prototype then, it's like, well, this is great. I get the idea. But you know what? iOS doesn't actually use buttons like that. Doesn't actually, you don't click, you swipe. I'm like, oh, okay, got it. So the whole terminology was different. So if you can try to get it kind of close to, the tool you're actually planning to build in, it'll kind of save you, I think, a lot of headache trying to do that translation. Because then I went out and I found wireframing tools that there's one called UX Toolbox. It's actually out of England. Really sweet tool to use and very easy and very inexpensive. So, I was able to actually convert that, do the screens, mock them up for him in that. And then he's like, oh, I got it. Okay, great. But it was a translation. It was almost like, I was speaking Spanish and he was speaking German. And we were just, I had to buck up and learn the terminology and having, fortunately, I was given a very patient developer, so I found one. So that's just a really good idea to try and prototype as close to you can in the environment you'll be deploying that in.
How much did it cost
To develop the app?
Wow.
I think it was, we did a cut, what's that?
Well,
Maybe about 5,000 or so. 6,000. It was fairly inexpensive, considering what it could have been. But I knew artists. I knew, I had the developer on board. I was able to do all the wireframing myself, all the design stuff. So really, it was just hiring out some of the artwork and the developer. So, it wouldn't be that way, I'm sure, for a lot of people because, somebody's got a great idea, but no wireframing skills. And actually, I think the artwork was about as expensive as the development because it gets really complicated. There are all these different sizes. They've got it's insane how many different sizes of an icon you need for the iTunes store.
Can you use it on a tablet as well as a cell phone or a smartphone?
Yes. Yes, you can. We don't have it out for Android yet, but that'll be coming, and that's a whole different build. So we're talking about doing something in the cloud that'll make it a little more multi-device friendly.
How hard was it to get accepted into the App Store?
It was not hard at all, but I used a developer who knew what he was doing. So he was able to say, that's not going to fly. It has to be this little widget that we're using. And so some of my creative ideas kind of got chucked aside for iOS standards, but it started out looking great in Storyline. Other questions?
Can you talk a little bit more about your user personas and what they are and how you use them and how you tweak them?
Yes. One in particular actually there are a couple of them that come to mind, several, but I'll focus on two of them. One was this situation where we were trying to guide it was a project where we're starting from scratch, so we're trying to figure out how to guide the learner through this whole process. So it wasn't just the training, it was really figuring out the process itself. Saying, okay, at what stage, they walk in the door, what's the first thing that happens? Well, we have to send them over here, they have to get registered into the computer, then we have to sit them down and do some testing, and and then they come back 3 days later, things like that. So, we actually took, I compiled a kind of he was a compilation persona made up of a number of people that I'd heard about in this center, this environment. This was an adult basic ed project, and by taking some of those personas, it's like okay, he doesn't have a car, so how is he going to get here? well, we've got coupons that we can give him if he's coming here for these classes, so we could give him one of those. Okay, once he get those, well, he has to get registered into the system first to be able to get those. Okay, so he's going to have to get here the first day. You know, you can just start with the basics and say, you know, here's his, or his or her, you know, sex, ethnicity, age, maybe a little paragraph of background story on
So it's
them.
like your description of your target population. but
Exactly.
giving different types of individuals, subsets of the target
Right.
population.
Yes. And then when you're actually in this brainstorming session, you can take a look at it and go, okay, well, you know, Jeffrey, you know, he lives 40 miles out and he works remotely. Is this software going to work with his system? What is he going to need to, you know, does he need to download something? Does he need to sign in? If we're doing training that's through WebEx, you know, does he have that, you know, ability? Does he even have internet connection? Does he have a dial-up or, you know, DSL that's, you know, really bad and he's not going to be able to participate? Is he going to have to drive in? A lot of those little questions that, you know, instead of scheduling the class and inviting him and then having him go, well, I can't do that because my internet is, you know, dial up and I share it with 5 other people out here in the middle of Minnesota, and you know, we won't get broadband for another 3 years, which is actually, I mean, there are a lot of places out there that don't have broadband, I found out. So, you know, any little considerations like that, just, you know, identify your target population and make up people, you know, make up names. And by giving them a name, it actually also gives you a reference point. So then you can actually build it out and go, okay, well, and you can add to those over time. So if you kind of come up with something where, oh, somebody said that they're going to have this challenge with it because of this reason, you can add that into one of your personas so that you actually make sure that you're building for that.
I think another thing about the target population support is, do they all, in fact, have the same tasks that they have to do, or the same, do they do them, for example, does this person do it every day? Does this person do it once every 6 months? Because training is going to help them.
Good point. Yes.
And so there's a,
Right. And how do you address those needs? Do you
Yeah.
need some performance
Yeah.
support at some point? Do you
Yeah.
need a tool that he can just,
do you have a population, or do you have 2 or 3 that each need different forms
Right.
of performance?
I worked on a project with that. This was out of the Blandon Foundation in northern Minnesota. It was a grant from the U.S. Department of Commerce, and they were putting broadband technology out into greater Minnesota. So it was that, you know, if we build it, will they come kind of a situation. And the Blandon Foundation had they had some of the most creative meetings I've ever seen, and they got some really great creative ideas out of it. But it was very organic, intentionally. So their very first meeting was a collaboration of these groups from all over Minnesota. Some of these people were broadband providers, some of them were librarians, some of them were us, you know, trying to build this stuff for them. It was a real mix of people, and what they did was they divided them up into teams, and those of us who were supposed to build for these people had like a speed dating session with them. So these teams would come around and they would sit down, and we would have just a few minutes, you know, like 15, 20 minutes to get as much information out of this person, this group, before they moved on. And so I'm standing there going, okay, I'm supposed to be creating digital literacy training for you people, and I've got 20 minutes to get all the information out of each of you. What do I ask? So as they sat down, I said, okay, let's pretend we've already built this, we're bringing it to your town next week. How are we going to train? They'd look at me and say, well, we don't have a site. We've got a library that has 3 computers. Will that work? We don't have any way to market it. We don't have, you know, our one group was like mostly senior citizens. Another population was mostly Somali. Another population was Hispanic. Some of these people had to drive an hour or more to get to a place where they could actually take the class. So there were it was that exact situation where there was the population was so varied that we had to really figure out some creative ways to address those needs. But sometimes putting a sense of urgency on it really makes them panic and come up with some really good responses. Because, you know, if I'd said, well, we're going to build this, and what do you think? And, you know, what are your needs? And they'd be sitting back going, well, you know, we're going to need this, or, you know, we'll figure it out and get back to you. But when you say we're going to bring it next week, where we're going to set up and who are you going to invite? Like, whoa, okay, you know, whole different dynamic, and you get a whole lot more information out of them really fast when you do that.
Can you use personas like in a corporate setting to kind of categorize people by job title or function?
You
I mean,
can.
Is that a use of personas? And furthermore, then, is it helpful, do you think, in a pilot training setting to have kind of homogeneous groups or not? Because that's kind of one of the questions I have going on right now. It's sort of like, well, we got 530 people to train from 4 different groups within the organization.
Okay.
And our pilot is literally next month. So
Ah,
it's like, okay, do we just randomly select a few to attend the pilot, or do we want to mix, or do we want a kind of homogeneous, like all mechanical engineers, for example?
I would
You know,
mix
there's
it,
kind of
yeah.
pros and cons both ways, but
Yeah.
it's like,
If it's
you
an actual
know.
pilot, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so you're expecting to be able to get some feedback from this and make sure it's working okay before you
Yeah.
spread it out.
Yep.
I would go for the broadest, like I would get the
mix.
engineer, I would
Okay.
get the custodian, I would get
yeah, okay,
yeah, everybody in between, because you are going to get completely different reactions from
richer feedback,
Yeah.
you think, okay.
Yeah, and that'll also help you figure out how to disseminate it when you actually do,
Mhm.
finalize it and say, okay, well, for this person, we might need to embed a mentor in here. For this person, they might actually need to take a computer class before they can take the training, or we might have to build a tutorial in there, a more robust tutorial, so they can click on it and maybe get a tour through there, where the electrical engineer is just going to sit down and take the class.
Yeah,
Somebody else
Okay.
might actually need a tool, some kind of a tutorial that walks them through it.
Okay.
I run into that all the time because I get more and more requests to speak about technology. And you just pick the average group of 25 people and sit them down, and the backgrounds now in terms of what's going on with technology are so wide that there's no way to address that group with one talk. And so I'm more and more requiring people to split up the group and say, we're going to have multiple different kinds of things, because they cannot all take the same class, no matter how good it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that who is the audience question needs to be something that we ask right at the beginning.
There's multiple audiences.
Yeah, right.
Because you find
Yes.
out it's
It's
not one, it's,
complicated,
it's
yeah.
It's really complicated.
Oh, yeah.
But I thought maybe you use personas to kind of group people, you know.
You could do that, in the early stages when you're trying to
Yeah.
figure out how are you going to do that pilot. You could totally say, okay, we need somebody who's got high skills. We need somebody from another group. You could give them names. Here's Margaret, and she's the cafeteria worker person, and you can actually build them out like that, and so people know where you're pulling these names from. And when you refer to Margaret, everybody knows that you're talking about, well, we're going to have to deal with this, the group of people with this set of skills. So it's a great way to do that, and to be able to not just compartmentalize it, but also to be able to, it's more memorable for people, rather than saying, well, here's our list of 5 different criteria, and we need an engineer, and we need a so-and-so. If you can create that story, because people remember stories. So really, in their mind, Margaret is a person, and she's the person that they're getting coffee from every day at lunch, and that's more memorable to them than if you just say, we need A, B, and C criteria.
And we're thinking exactly about that, multiple audiences and helping. I'm facilitating subject matter experts in developing training, especially e-learning, and we started with sort of best practice for engaging your learners and sort of learner-based principles, and doing a needs assessment and really focusing on audience assessment. And so I felt like really proud of myself when you were talking about some of the questions that you were asking. And you're cleaning up, so those are exactly the questions I have them asking for them, and their sort of not really analysis, but in their assessment, to develop, to reflect on, and to actually complete this template and get through it before we'll move on to subsequent steps. And and in addition, so I don't have an empathy map, and I really like this to sort of flesh that out. But the level of responses they come up with when they're thinking about their audiences, because they're a step removed, and they're probably not getting out to interview their audiences. So I'm not sure if I should make that sort of an expectation or a step, or how to make sure, because I feel like they might understand that they have multiple audiences, or they might be able to speak at a high level, but they're not really connected. Like a lot of the, what does your audience, what's the consequence to your audience or to that individual if this is successful or if it doesn't go right, not the organizational impact, which is what everyone sort of puts there, but for the learner themselves. So I still feel like, it's so crucial to have a really sound understanding of the audience and what's motivating your learners, that motivation. But in working with my subject matter experts, we're still a step away, so I'm trying to figure out how to get them to dig that next step. Do you have recommendations?
Yeah, it's, can you do it yourself? Well, and here's the reason I'm asking that. Subject matter experts are subject matter experts for a reason, and usually they're just like such an incredible wealth of knowledge that, pulling them back from that and saying, we just need, the grass, Mr. Grass guy.
So we're in an educational institution, so there are subject matter experts, but there also are trainers, facilitators. So they
are, okay.
Both
okay, so they've got,
to
okay.
sort of get to this step to hopefully improve the quality of both the facilitation we'll do in person as well as sort of my charges around e-learning.
Okay.
So while there's subject matter, they also are the ones currently doing the training.
Okay. Okay.
The most difficult thing for a subject matter expert, any subject matter expert to do is to see the world through the eyes of the novice.
Yes.
They usually can't do it.
So, and that's why if you could actually be there with them, because if you're new to that experience, and if not, do you have an intern or somebody that could sort of facilitate that? You really want to have a list of questions that you want to get answered, because otherwise they would end up being all over the board. Not that you wouldn't get some valuable information out of that, but you really, if you want to make sure that you're getting succinct information, then it's good to prepare that for them in advance and say, this is the information we need, this is why. But if you can find somebody who is a step removed from it so that they're actually new to that process, so that they're kind of listening to the answers and saying, well, you didn't really answer that person's question. You thought you did, but it really wasn't quite there. Then that actually would be very helpful. Other questions? Running out of time here. Okay, well, I think that does it. Thank you again so much for letting me come and share some of my scary stories with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, did you talk to her yet, Arnold? So remember now, our next meeting is February 17th at the St. Louis Park Fire Room. And I have babies, so.
You want to leave the
Yep. Thank you for coming.